Okay guys, here we are again. I have the intake and the exhaust manifolds off and apart. And this is the trouble area. Right in here, we can see some carbon scoring there. This gasket, look at how easily that just crumbles off there. And this is how thin it is. It's not even as thick as a credit card. So this little flap helps guide all the exhaust down into the collector and out the tailpipe. Let me move around this way. This portion here was adjusted over here, and I was able to get this apart and close the flapper valve inside, so now all the hot exhaust gas will go down instead of circulating up and around, and this gasket will have a longer life. But you know, 11 years is still pretty good. It's not a bad thing. I have some Permatex gasket material maker, which will help. Hopefully you can see. Let's put it in the shade. There we go, that's better. This stuff will help. I've used it before. It'll help seal up the gasket, and it's good up to like I think 850 degrees Fahrenheit. So I got to clean this up, and then here's the intake manifold here. It's upside down. I got to clean this surface here a little bit, and then put some of that Permatex and put it back together. I will use new lock washers because the old ones are dead. There's the bolt that came out of it. It's a grade 8 bolt, and yeah, my gimbal is doing funky things. Anyway, so that's it. I'll take a video when everything's back together. Oh yeah, one other thing I'm going to do is on the collector here, I'm going to use that Permatex gasket maker in between all those just to help seal everything up. And I'll get everything back together, and then we'll fire it up and listen to more exhaust leaks. Anyway, be right back. Okay, I have everything successfully back together. I used the Permatex gasket sealer, high temp gasket sealer. I found that the gasket that was between the intake and exhaust manifold was upside down, with the paper side toward the exhaust manifold when it should have been the steel side. All 4 bolts on the carburetor were loose, and the gasket beneath it is kind of squished. So I used new lock washers. This carburetor's going to go away anyway. And I successfully removed everything. I don't show that, of course. And I didn't tear up this nice graphite intake exhaust manifold gasket. And I made a good decision last weekend in installing these studs, because they helped out tremendously in getting this back together. So I put a new return spring, stiffer return spring. The one that was on there was pretty weak. So I haven't fired this thing up since last week because I've been working. Let's see what happens. It's going to take a moment to refill the float bowl in the carburetor I can smell fuel now. Because when I had it off, I measured this intake port and the 2 ports underneath, and the Stromberg carburetor I have is bigger than this ball and ball. So let's see what happens now. That's a lot better. I don't remember if this stuff is going to smoke. This Permatex gasket sealer, I don't remember if it's going to smoke or not, but she's getting hot. Sounds a lot better. The engine's going to run much better too. Let's listen in at the piece of junk muffler that's on this thing. Take a look at the temperature. Now the engine's still warming up. We're not going to be showing much temperature rise yet. There she goes. Yeah, this thing, night and day. The temp gauge goes right up to 160. So I have my hand on the cab, and we can see the engine shake a little bit. It feels a lot better. No smoke. Valves don't sound like they're clicking. Of course, I haven't checked them in a long time, but it's pretty temperature now. Gauge may be a little weak because this engine is supposed to produce 60 pounds, 62 pounds at an idle when cold. But no matter. Okay, I'm going to wrap this video up here. This is a success. Okay, I'm going to point with a screwdriver because this is hot. These two bolts here were left loose, and then, oh man, right here there's a nut and one on the other side. I left those loose too, and when I tightened down all of the exhaust manifold bolts, I started with that one right there that's in the center of the screen, and then I went to this one here that's in the center of the screen and tightened those down, not gorilla tight, but pretty tight. And that got the intake for 3 and 4 and the exhaust for 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 seated together. Then I tightened this one, and then that one that's in the center of the screen, and that got the intake and exhaust and that intake and that exhaust seated correctly. And then I did these bolts here and in here, and then the studs, the nuts on the studs last. So that kind of got everything laid down nice and flat against this intake and exhaust manifold gasket. Then I went back and I tightened these two nuts down, and then these two bolts that are under here, and did them in sequence. So that got the intake and exhaust manifold locked together. The problem that happens is when you don't refurbish these 4 fasteners here, is the whole alignment of the intake and exhaust manifold sometimes can be mismatched. And when you go and just throw the intake exhaust manifold onto the engine and you run it for the first time, you usually hear a click and the exhaust manifold will break either at 1 or back here at 6, right across the front. And then you're on the lookout for a new exhaust manifold, and they are becoming increasingly hard to find because this is a military issued a military style exhaust manifold that dumps straight down. The other ones kind of come out at an angle like this and dive between the steering gear and the engine, whereas this one goes around the front of the steering gear, the exhaust. So I'm always very careful not to over tighten these things. Gaskets are replaceable. Anyway, this video is getting long. It's 13 minutes. Thanks for watching both sections. Hope you guys have a great weekend, and thanks for watching. Bye.